But before we leave the crypto section, and we obviously go to the rabbit hole of government and where that's at, but we have one more crypto topic, which I'm not really familiar with, but I'd love to get to the opinion of the guys, which is this particular tweet from Balaji.
Yep.
Which of you put this in? Is that you, Dylan?
So I added this in there.
Okay, great.
So yeah, Balaji, I don't know how to say his last name, but he's was involved with Bitcoin, and then he's kind of lost some favor of the hardcore Bitcoiners over the past few years. But this was a tweet that he had penned, and it started this week. Basically, the essence of this week is that the banks and the government aren't telling you the truth. Significantly more banks and institutions are insolvent, and they are basically trying to cover that up. And the house of cards is going to tumble down. And perhaps within the next 90 days, it's entirely possible to see hyperinflation of the US dollar and Bitcoin go from $28,000 as it is today to $1 million per coin. And that basically the Bitcoin is the life raft. It is the only true escape from a hyperinflationary collapse of the US dollar. And he even took a bet on that. And so there's got a lot of people talking about it. So I want to talk about on the show from a couple of angles. One is it's an interesting tweet. Talk about like the chance of it actually happening. Like let's be real. And then because we are talking about prepping, if it does happen, what does that mean? What should people be prepared for and look for? And are you prepared for that? So there's two angles I thought it'd be interesting to discuss here. So the first is what's the likelihood of it actually happening? And is this just a really brilliant marketing and self-promotion tweet by Balaji to try and be relevant? And then the other one is if it actually happens, what should you prepare for? And what does that indicate about the current state of our economy in the world? What do you guys think?
Well, I want to jump in here because I want to talk about the history and give Patrick a moment to see if he can get his lovely picture of the white paper. But for those of you who have never read the Bitcoin white paper, this is the entire white paper right here. I think it's 11 or 12 pages. It's a heady read, but reading the first it's like reading a patent. If you ever read that, it's gobbledygook. But read like the summary, the aspects, but understand the context that Bitcoin was founded upon. It was launched in 2008, 2009, after the first global financial crisis in 2008. So if you go back and watch The Big Short, or you watch Too Big to Fail, and all the banks collapsed, the Bear Stearns, the Lehman Brothers, what we talked about earlier in the show. And by the way, if you're watching this clip, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and watch the full video as well. Make sure you get the big picture as well. But thank you for watching, regardless how you're watching us. But the context of Bitcoin being launched in 2008, 2009 is kind of a response to the first global financial crisis. And this is kind of the intent of Bitcoin in the first place. So while it hasn't caught on as much as I'm sure the originators wanted by this point, I think now we're seeing the true purpose and people are taking notice. Patrick?
I'm going to answer Dylan's question first, which is, do I think Bitcoin can hit $1 million in 90 days? I'd say I wouldn't put a single dollar on that bet. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean,
not even a dollar?
I'd put lots of dollars.
I don't bet on things that I can't back up, so I wouldn't put $1 on it. No, I wouldn't. I would go buy some more Bitcoin for $1 worth or something, but that's the way I would bet on it. If Bitcoin's going to $1 million, then sure, but it doesn't really change where I'm at today because I believe Bitcoin's going to $1 million. I just don't think it's happening that fast. I think in this cycle, we'll likely break 100,000, maybe hit 120, possibly 150. But what we're going to have to see for that to happen is really big money coming in. We're talking institutional money. Mm-hmm. And I could see that happening. Well, Jeff, I'd like to hear your
different answer. I'll let you finish.
No, because I just think it's going to grow bigger once institutional money comes in. That's where you start seeing ridiculous, huge jumps in numbers. So,
but what is the money?
I don't know. It would have to be something really significant that drives people to $200,000. And how many people would actually not sell at $200,000?
So,
what about $500,000? What about those people who get $750,000? You're not going to buy a house for your family if you have a Bitcoin? There's no way. I just see way too many hard stops, way too many ceilings to bust through for that to happen. And then you have the entire market cap of Bitcoin sitting at
20 trillion.
What you know what I'm talking about? So I think in 90 days, No, I wouldn't bet on it.
Be 20 trillion at that point. Is that right? 1 million Bitcoin would be 20. That does seem right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
for a
the way I'd
million times
answer
21 million.
But so okay. So before we get to Jeff,
trillion.
since I posed the question, so Patrick, you say you say inevitably yes, Bitcoin will go there.
Yeah.
But in 90 days, hell no.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
That's for
financial advice.
That's for the first question.
If I was wrong, I promise you I won't be mad. Like if this video plays in 90 days and they're like, Patrick, you are the dumbest person in the world, I'd be like, I'm retired. I don't care what you think.
So go ahead.
Yeah,
Dylan, did you have more?
No, I want you to answer. Because you
Okay.
seem like you have a different perspective than Patrick.
Yeah, I want to hear your wrong answer.
So my question, I would answer with a question of like, what does $1 million at that point even buy you? So that's where I'm going with it. I'm picturing wheelbarrows full of cash, which have happened in other countries, Zimbabwe, Cyprus. If you don't know what happened in Cyprus, find out, study that too. That's probably, I'll make a note to bring that one for the next history lesson. But that's very relevant right now. But the Weimar Republic is really the simplest answer. And you're looking at a 20x devaluation. So like of the purchasing power in $1 in 90 days. Could that happen? Absolutely. Because we've seen hyperinflation happen before, and it happens very, very quickly. That's why they call it hyper. And it's really just it's a manic behavior of people with losing total confidence in the currency. And as soon as they get it in their hands, they rush to buy and convert it to something else that has value. That's where those pictures of currency in a wheelbarrow, we get that from. And we've seen that in Latin America. We've seen it in Africa. We've seen it in a number of countries. That's where I think that's how I think that it could go up to $1 million in 90 days because the dollar has just completely collapsed. That's my answer.
Could I ask a conversely opposite question though? If the same thing happens, could not the argument be made that it would be worth $0?
That Bitcoin?
Yeah.
No, because if Bitcoin goes up to $1 million in 90 days, at least from my perspective, that means that people are assigning it more value than the US dollar because it's not falling at that same rate. And so people want to hold their value in something like Bitcoin rather than US dollars, where the US dollar.
So no one will want the dollars. No one will even trade it in the dollars. It won't be available on exchanges for US dollars. It'll be worth nothing in dollars. Nothing will be worth anything in dollars. Your dollars will be worthless.
But you could buy a chicken with your Bitcoin. So you could go to a producer who's producing cows, chickens, whatever it is, whatever thing you need, and they would trade you their chicken for your Bitcoin.
They would not. Yeah, you'd get a better deal with them. Those people, they're going to want gold and silver. You're going to get a better deal for that. I look at it, unless you got Farmer John there who knows exactly what you're getting, most of these people aren't ready for that yet. They're just not. We'd like to believe that everyone is going to jump on board with Bitcoin because it is like the answer to all of our problems and our savior of our world economy, but it's just not there yet. We don't have enough people who understand it, know how to use it, or are ready to use it. And much less do they know anyone who would accept it if they took it from you. So
I agree.
Patrick,
we'll go
Patrick, you're arguing with yourself. You just you just argued against yourself by saying people aren't ready for it. So in 90 days, there's still going to be, I would say more than half of the United States is going to use the dollar in 90 days. They won't be out of it mentally or physically or the way that they get paid for their labor. There's still going to be the dollar in existence. So I think that
it's not going to happen in 90 days.
Right. It could happen in 90. I think that Bitcoin could exceed $1 million in 90 days.
It's not happening. Pardon? Let's check in 90 days. It's not even happening. I'd put it's not even happening this year.
It's not happening. I think it'd be terrible if it actually happened because the implications of what a hyperinflated dollar would mean, everything would break down. Credit wouldn't exist. You wouldn't be able to facilitate any trade where settlements weren't finalized, right? There'd be no trust in the system. People would have to migrate to other things to hold their value, right? They'd be rapidly seeking other sources. So gold and silver would go up immediately because people know what those are, and they want to store any of their time in that. So, like, say for example, you get paid, right? You make $500 in a day, and it's inflating, hyperinflating. So the next day, you can purchase half the things you could today with that $500. Where you're going to go out and buy something immediately that would hold that value, right? And you're thinking, like, what could I buy to hold the value? Because obviously the dollar that I just got paid in, because your company's not going to adjust your salary. They're not going to be able to do that in that short of time frame. So you're like, I got paid $500, right? That can, as of today, buy me one cart of groceries. Okay, so groceries might be a thing, but that only lasts a week. You're gonna need to get a cart of groceries the next week. So like, okay, I'll buy half a cart of groceries and gold, silver, Bitcoin, right? Or what else that you can trade fairly liquidly or in a fairly liquid manner. And it would be chaos for a good time period.
I think Dylan hit on something I also wanted to mention. The same thing, and may all opposes to Patrick. Patrick, we've heard many people that are pretty intelligent say that silver could go to $600 or gold could go to 10,000 or more. Do you think that silver can go to $600 in 90 days? The same kind of rate of inflation. Okay,
no, I don't.
But we've heard the case from Cliff High, and we've heard the case from
yes,
Mike Maloney.
Yes, if the commodities exchange and the derivatives fail and the banking fraud is exposed, then yes, overnight I could see that. So
we can all create a narrative
highly more
that
likely in 90 days to happen. Like one of those, like a scenario where they say, "Hey, we don't really have as much silver and gold as we told you," and then they're like, "What do we do?" Everything goes up in one day. Yeah, I could see that happening much faster than I can see Bitcoin going up to 1 million.
Follow up then. Silver and gold have gone up 20x. Has Bitcoin kept pace?
No, it will not keep pace. Bitcoin will lag behind.
Okay. I could see that. I could see that argument, but I'm just setting the dynamic.
And your mother, Jeff, you would go out and buy gold. Dylan, you'd go out and buy
absolutely.
silver.
And this, I mean, we are economic preppers. But look at the logo. Okay, we got the logo right there.
But the thing is,
it's all there.
But the big problem with that is,
but most people don't buy Bitcoin. They don't know how to spend their dollars on it.
The only way you could buy gold in that scenario, is you'd have to trade them something of equal value. They're not going to take a credit for US dollars. Like, you have to trade something physical and get that in your possession immediately if you're in a hyperinflationary scenario. No one's going to be like, hey, you can pay me these US dollars that take, a month to actually settle in my account, or it could be canceled, and I'm going to ship you that gold. So you have to get it from the source, right?
But the other, sorry, Dylan, but the other thing to consider there is that, like, even if you get a comparable value, you just say, like, okay, today I'll give you 10 eagles for a Bitcoin, just to say that's the ratio. But those of us that study the dynamics are like, which one's going to go up at a higher rate going forward? That's really what investing is all about. Yeah. Would you rather hold wealth in gold, or would you rather hold it in silver, or would you rather hold it in Bitcoin, or do you want exposure to all three? Those are the kind of discussions that you have with yourself and people like us that, like, where are we going to go? And we are already in these commodities and currencies and stores of wealth that some people may not have full exposure or understanding to. That's really the conversation, this is a great conversation. We could probably have this for a long time. It could be its own show. And I think
I wouldn't be mad if gold or silver or Bitcoin went to the moon. I'm prepared for all of those: guns, ammo, gold, silver, real estate. They can all go crazy. I'm prepared for the dollar to fail. The banking news that happened last week didn't scare me. It made me feel happy and sad at the same time. Happy to know that we're on the right path, but sad knowing that so many people have no idea what's coming. And every time, we watched it in that movie last week, but the guy looked at him and said, "I don't know what you two are so happy about." He goes, "Don't you know every time the unemployment rate goes up, people die?" And when you actually think about what this means to the economy, if that were to happen, I'd be happy and I'd be really sad, but I'd be prepared and I wouldn't be scared. Yeah. But I think that wouldn't be a very great world to live in. And I think that's what we got to get ready for, is what are we going to do about it? This stuff isn't, what are we talking about that says, hey, things are looking nice? When have we said, hey, things are looking good? Well, I think we found a lot of gold, or we're producing a lot of oil. We're going to increase our exports and GDP is coming in and America is getting richer. We don't hear anything like that.
I think you made a good point, and this is for the audience and all of us, is like, if we're talking about these scenarios, and like Patrick said, he actually felt good because he's been prepared for it. He has these assets. He has access to these things. He's thought about this so that if it happens, he doesn't have to scramble to acquire them, that he has them on hand. And if something like this happens, the demand basically dramatically increases for those things that Patrick just mentioned. And so if you don't have those in your possession, if you think back to a couple of years ago when the demand dramatically increased for something like toilet paper and you didn't have toilet paper, like prices skyrocketed, it wasn't available, you can't get it anywhere, right? It becomes a whole hassle to deal with and to navigate that. So if you have these things on hand now and you're prepared for it, you ask yourself the question, like, if this happens, not will, am I prepared? Like, what level of risk do I say this will happen? Or what probability do I assign for this? And if that happens, am I ready for it? Am I okay if that happens and I'm not prepared for it? How am I going to deal with that scenario? And these are the good questions to ask yourself and figure out the answers to determine your own situation.
Part of being prepared is being ready for various scenarios. And we all feel prepared because we have exposure to gold, silver, and crypto amongst all of us, so that if either one of them take off compared to anything else, we're prepared and we're not scared. But that's kind of the conversation. But to close this really good conversation that we just had out, and I hope you enjoyed it, please leave comments of what you liked or disliked about it. But Cliff High has been talking about $600 silver for years. But he also often says, you're not going to like the world that exists for a $600 silver price.
Mm-hmm.